issue of Immanuel is an interesting one. The issue of Immanuel is interesting because it is supposed to be the name of an individual. Here comes a word from our God to you, King Ahaz. Ask anything in height and in depth, as you would ask any other God, and it will be given to you. The response? No. I won't do that. I'm going to keep to my ways. I'm going to keep what I'm doing. I will bargain however I will bargain. I will collaborate with whoever I will collaborate with, but I will not take on your request, nor will I make a demand. The response? Okay. You will tempt and ask the other gods of the other denominations, but you will not humble yourself to ask anything of the God of our fathers. So, Isaiah 7:14. So, Isaiah 7:14. The Lord himself shall give you a sign. Behold, a virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Immanuel. A son is to be born, an individual is to be born with the Creator's stamp upon him, and this individual, upon their birth, they are to bear and to confess a name called Immanuel. Now, I have, from our first meeting getting into this topic of Immanuel, to our later meetings getting into this topic of Immanuel, added on to this topic of Jesus Christ, gone over what this means, and gone over the idea of name to the Bible. Now, it may seem as though we're deviating because initially we're starting with the marriage. This is all for the marriage that comes at the height of justification. We have not lost track of the fact that our faith's body is to marry the being of our human to form a marriage of the two, thus giving birth to an experience, a human and devotional experience that is beyond anything imaginable. And so from the beginning of our time together up until this point, Immanuel blatantly and not so blatantly has been the subject of justification, because in order for justification to be what it should be, in order for that marriage to take place, the minister standing between our faith's body and the being of our human, that minister is called Immanuel. And when we think on this term Immanuel, we ought not to think of it as the term representing the name of a human being. My name is my name, your name is your name. The name of this program is called Justification. That's not how things work in the Bible. In the Bible, name does not mean literal name. Name means connotation for ministry. Name means description for philosophical service. The name of this individual is supposed to be Immanuel, because when he is presented, or when he presents himself, whatever he presents is to speak to what comes out of his mouth and touches on his name. His name is Immanuel. It's no different than the name of Clark Kent is Superman. The name of Batman is Bruce Wayne. The name of our favorite wrestler, they have a real name and they have a stage name. This name is a stage name. It is an acting name for the individual. It is not the individual. It represents the ministry. It represents the ministry of that individual. And there's a really cool way to understand the conception of Immanuel. A really cool way. And every time I talk about this subject of virgin birth, and I take the scope away from our naturally inherited Western frame of mind, bring it back to the Bible, and I teach this in a way that's very creative, but in a way that allows the Bible to explain itself in an interesting sort of direction. And so in the very next chapter, Isaiah 7, we have Immanuel mentioned. Isaiah 8 is the same birth spoken of in Isaiah 7. So turning to Isaiah chapter 8, beginning at verse 1. Isaiah 8, reading verses 1 through 3. Isaiah 8, reading verses 1 through 3. Isaiah 8, 1 through 3 reads, "Moreover, the Lord said unto me, Take thee a great roll, and write in it with a man's pen concerning 𝐕𝐈𝐒 And I took unto me faithful witnesses to record Uriah the priest and Zechariah the son of Jeberechiah. And I went unto the prophetess, and she conceived, and bare a son. Then said the Lord to me, Call his name 𝐕𝐈𝐒 Question: how was this child conceived? The answer is pretty interesting because the story is interesting. How was this child 𝐕𝐈𝐒 conceived? Let me give you the rundown. Here's the rundown. The rundown is, God says to the prophet, get pen and paper. Prophet says, I've got pen and paper. God says, write with that pen and paper the words that I will tell you. Prophet says, I can't do this, so I'm going to get some help. Prophet grabs two different priests who have pens and papers of their own. God gives the prophet the words of God, and the prophet gives the two helpers, priests, the words that are coming out of God's mouth from his mouth. So the priests now, these two, are writing what are coming out of the prophet's mouth. Prophet gets the writings, takes the writings to the prophetess. Prophetess conceives a son. Son's name is 𝐕𝐈𝐒. That's the story of this conception. How was the conception formed? What kind of conception was this? Can ink and rolls of paper give birth to a human being? That's the question. Can ink and rolls of paper give birth, or can they conceive a human being? Trick question. The answer, literally, no. The answer, literally, yes. Not literally, philosophically. See, the Bible doesn't deal with, when it comes to names, the birth of that individual literally. There's a separation here. The son that was conceived, the name given to the son was added on to that person. There is the individual that was born, and there is the name that was given to them. Now the birth, this is a birth by ink and by rolls. That means the conception is mental. That means the one being conceived is not a literal baby. They are a baby in understanding. They are my age. They are my age. They are my youth. Maybe older, or maybe even older as the prophet in the thing. They are, what I'm saying is a man. They are a young man. They are a young man that is conceived, not literally, mentally, by ink and by rolls, and are given a name, 𝐕𝐈𝐒. Family, thank you for joining me on this Wednesday morning. You know, we have to touch on some deep things and we have to get into everything. And I appreciate you. And I'm thankful to you that you also appreciate me, which is always a pleasant surprise for me to hear, which is why I am taking a moment to acknowledge a comment from a viewer. And this is coming from Howard Nosik. Howard Nosik in the Cape. Howard Nosik writes, "Hello, Linwood. Just would like to remind your listeners that God is like the air we breathe. His mercy is renewed every day. Do not put your trust in flesh, i.e. this world. Put it in God. Choose Him, not money. The rule of the Lord is to be trusted. The command of the Lord is clear. It gives light to the eyes. The decrees of the Lord are truth, and all of them just. They are more to be desired than gold, than the purest of gold, and sweeter are they than honey from honeycomb. Many are called, few are chosen. God bless." Howard Nosik. So I'm reading Howard Nosik's comment because it's fitting and because I'm grateful for these words, and I'm grateful for you, Howard. Thank you. Thank you for your thoughts. Thank you for your care. And thank you for putting the concern of everybody listening, including my own self, and including your own self, first. And this is important. This is important because we need to, when we're entering into the realm of justification, when we're entering into the Bible, when we're entering into a concern for a care, when it comes to our faith's growth and development, and when it comes to our conversation's conscience, we need to be able to understand that there is a separation between the individual and their name. Individual is not the name. The name is not the individual. 𝐷𝐻𝐻 is not the son that was born. The son that was born was already present with a name of his own. After being conceived by ink and by rolls, he received a new name, or a name, 𝐷𝐻𝐻. This is the Bible concept. Bible concept is name does not suggest literal name. Bible concept suggests that birth is not literal birth. Bible concept suggests that one's conception is a conception of mind and not a conception of literal body. Have to remember, if we're going to take the Bible to be true, John 4:24, that God is a spirit. If we're going to take that true, we have to hold the Bible to that entire standard. Can't let it go. Why? Because nothing in the Bible is presently available for us to discern. Everything in the Bible is presently available for us to mentally or inwardly discern, not physically. Even when the writers wrote these things in the time that they wrote them, they didn't write them for a physical purpose, they wrote them for a mental purpose. And this is Bible culture when it comes to conception. This is Bible culture when it comes to conception. Conception is not physical. We, in our Western culture, in our Christian denomination, and in our religious opinion, inherited or self-cultivated, get terms mixed up because we don't put them in their right place. The ones that wrote this book have an idea for how to understand the things that are in this book. We didn't write this book. Our culture isn't framed around the things from Genesis to Malachi. But when we get into Matthew to the Revelation, that's when our present culture takes over. The Greek, Western, Roman culture, self-centeredness to the max. And so when we're hearing of conception and when we're hearing of name, It is completely distorted from the philosophy already engaging the readers from Genesis to Malachi. Now, there is no name Jesus Christ in Genesis to Malachi. The prophet said, Immanuel. Matthew attributes Immanuel to their main character. Immanuel is the title, not of a man, not of a human being, but of a philosophy. Immanuel was spoken by a man. This individual was conceived exactly the same, in the exact same manner as in Isaiah chapter 8, was conceived by pen and by rolls. By pen and by rolls. Doing so allowed him to regain, retake, replace, reinitiate, name to where he should be called Immanuel. Now, the man is not literally called Immanuel. The he is figurative, representing philosophy. The he is figurative, representing philosophy that he has in no way, shape, or form to do with he, human being. He is the philosophy. So we have a man who spoke Immanuel. We have a man who walked around, whose name, whose philosophy, whose doctrine was Immanuel, and this is the impress that he gave. This type of birth, a conception through words, is the type of birth or is the type of conception that the Bible famously talks about. When it comes to the Bible, when it comes to birth, when it comes to conception, the Bible is getting at the point of conception, the point of birth, the point of rejuvenation, the point of resurrection, the point of newness. That newness, as Paul says, newness in spirit. Not newness in the letter, newness in the spirit of the mind. And we know this from Ephesians 4:22 and 23. Ephesians 4:22 and 23. Ephesians 4:22 and 23 reads that you put off concerning the former conversation the old man, which is corrupt according to the deceitful lusts, and be renewed in the spirit of your mind. The birth that the Bible is concerned with, the only birth the writers of the Bible are concerned with, is a birth of mind. The concepts that we are introduced to when we enter into the book of Matthew and Luke are not Bible-centered concepts. What do I mean when I say that? The authors that wrote Genesis to Malachi have a different philosophy, devotional, religious, spiritual, whatever you want to say. They have a different philosophy from the writers of Matthew to the Revelation. When you enter into the book of Matthew, you're entering into the writings of individuals that are not from the train of thought of those authors that wrote Genesis to Malachi. So while there are still hints of Genesis to Malachi in Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Acts, and so forth, the conjecture, everything that is part of it, is not going to be the entirety. Because the authors from Genesis to the Revelation do not have the same philosophical take as the authors from Genesis to Malachi. When we talk birth in foundational Bible principle sense, when we talk birth, we are talking birth of mind. We are talking conception through a roll, and through a roll that was written with pen. In simple words, simple terms, we are talking about a conception through philosophy or through doctrine. This individual that was to be conceived, who was to bear the name Immanuel, was a human being was a human being who philosophically adopted a new name in which he should be understood as, again, the speech of this man is the speech should be understood as Immanuel. So when it comes to our experience, when it comes to what we are to go through, not we personally, we, our faiths, thoughts, and feelings, when it comes to what our conversation's conscience is to embrace, our conversation's conscience is to embrace Immanuel. That means no human being, no figure, no personage is to be the center of our spirituality, of our devotion. Not a human being, not a personage, but the words that personage spoke. Now, the name that is to edify our experience is Immanuel. Immanuel means God within us. Bible, God with us, but that term with in the general language means within. God within us. Immanuel means God within us. Immanuel meaning God within us is letting us know that this phrase Immanuel represents an experience, not a personage as I am. It represents an experience. Immanuel is an experience for a conversation to go through. And when experiencing Immanuel, the conversation's conscience is renewed into a new state of mind and being. The message that we are receiving and having a dialogue over this morning, this faithful Wednesday morning, it is beyond crucial, it's beyond necessary, it is beyond important to our growth and development as human beings and also as devotional creatures. But I also have a message for pastors, for ministers, and for leaders, and for you too, who are the pastor, the minister, and the leader of what is within you, your soul temple. Head on over to my website, linwoodjacksonjr.com, click the affiliate link, leading you to Church Source, and browse through their catalog. They have beautiful Bibles there. They have beautiful Bibles. They have beautiful resources for you to tune in to your personal devotional conversations, daily habit. This website, you can browse through it and observe what they're doing for you, for us, to make understanding our need to know the scriptures that much more important. So browse through their catalog, observe their resources, and whatever you do, do for the sake of growing your personal devotional conversation. So how do we find ourselves in this state of being to where because we are supposed to follow this train of thought, the way Immanuel was conceived, the way Maher-Shalal-Hash-Baz was conceived, it's the same way we are to be conceived. And even in the book of the Revelation, we are told that should we do and follow and execute the process of justification correctly, we too will receive a new name that no one else will know except us. That's what all of this is about. How do we receive that new name? 1 Timothy 4:15 and 16. The book of 1 Timothy chapter 4, verses 15 and 16. 1 Timothy 4:15 and 16 reads, "Meditate upon these things, give thyself wholly to them, that thy profiting may appear to all. Take heed unto thyself and unto the doctrine. Continue in them, for in doing this thou shalt both save thyself and them that hear thee." By understanding and remaining to understand that core doctrine within the scriptures, that core doctrine is called Immanuel. By meditating on the scriptures, no matter what part, the more we consistently do this, we will consistently gain application for Immanuel and understand what it is. This is how regeneration happens. Psalm 63, 4 through 7. Psalm 63, verses 4 through 7. Psalm 63, 4 through 7 reads, "Thus will I bless thee while I live. I will lift up my hands in thy name. I will lift up thy hands in thy name. I will lift up my hands in thy name. My soul shall be satisfied as with the marrow and fatness, and my mouth shall praise thee with joyful lips. When I remember thee upon my bed and meditate on thee in the night watches, because thou hast been my help. Therefore in the shadow of thy wings will I rejoice." It is the meditation on the name of the living God that is it for our conversation. When we are able to sit down with the scriptures and retain from it the name that we are supposed to retain from it, this is how we know we are doing all right and are on the right track. As we're doing these things in the scriptures, we're not going to know what we're learning. We're not going to understand the name that we are arriving at. But again, persistence and consistency will lead us to that name, Immanuel, and we will see and understand why God within us is the center of the scriptures. Again, Psalm 1, 1 and 2. Psalm 1, verses 1 and 2. Psalm 1, verses 1 and 2. "Blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor standeth in the way of sinners, nor sitteth in the seat of the scornful. But his delight is in the law of the Lord, and in his law doth he meditate day and night." Now, we've been saying that in order to receive that health, a meditation on the living God's name needs to take place. Well, this name is actually the law of the living God. The living God's law is Immanuel. This law is a commandment for our faith's renewal, the renewal of our faith's constitution. This is necessary to understand because when allowing Immanuel to do what it's supposed to do for our faith's confidence, the marriage between, because it will heal our conversation, the marriage between our human being and the conscience of our conversation will take place that much more easily because we have the guide our conversation needs in order to help our human being understand who and what it is and who and what it is not. And so the center of everything is the living God's chief apostle who preached Immanuel.